From the Subaru of Gwinnett Studio, welcome to Celebrating Powerhouse Women. Celebrating Powerhouse Women is proudly presented by NEMA and Sourced.
And hello, friends, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Celebrating Powerhouse Women. I am your host, Amanda Pirch Marmolejo, and this is the series that salutes and recognizes women leaders making an impact. Today, I am joined in studio by a friend and fellow podcaster, Miss Leta Brooks Hays. Good morning, Leta.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Welcome to the show. Leta is a multi-talented woman. First and foremost, she's an entrepreneur, also an influencer, and an interior designer. And we'll get into all the wonderful things that she does for her community and her family and for living here in just a minute. But I want to give you a moment, Leta, to tell our audience just a little bit about what you do.
Sure. And that was the small gist of it. It's like, where do I even jump in? So I do wear many hats, and I'm going to start with what you finished with the podcast. So I'm in a huge transition of my life, and we can unpack that a little bit more. So last year at this time, I had 3 retail stores. Everything was under the name Status, Shops at Status, Status Home Design. My interior design firm was Status Design Studio. So all of this, I mean, it was absolutely overwhelming. And through a series of challenging events, one of which was a fire that lightning hit one of my stores and it burned. And of course, that comes with all the challenges emotionally, financially. We lost all the merchandise, and rebuilding from that. So my platform has changed a little bit, but what came out of that was realizing that I was suffering from business burnout. And I didn't even know that I was. And we can unpack that more. So what I'm saying is there were all these entrepreneurial hats. I had 4 LLCs under one roof in Gwinnett County. I had a large, almost 13,000 square foot retail store. And so some of those LLCs are still going. I'm still selling merchandise. I have a new place to do that. I'm still doing my interior design firm. I have a place for that. But I've decided to switch gears, rein it back in a little bit. I've switched a few of my values and my time perspective on this. And so the podcast that you mentioned, I said I would jump into that. It is Status Life with Leta. I am in my 3rd season and I love it. I am a lifestyle blogger and podcaster. And so with that being said, I've always had a blog, but because when you run retail, it is all consuming. I mean, it is morning. One of my stores was open 7 days a week. The other one was open 5 days a week. Again, then the interior design firm. I mean, it was just absolutely overwhelming on top of being a mom, on top of I was planning a wedding. I know all these things. And so with taking the retail off of my plate, the blog existed, but I never got to do as much with it as I really wanted to. And so it's been, right now we're at about 10 months since I made a huge transition. And I didn't realize I was in business burnout until some things came off of my plate. And I went, oh my God. And again, that's a whole nother topic. And I've podcasted about it a ton and I've had experts on. And it is a very, very, very real thing that I didn't even know existed. So anyway, we'll put a pin in that for just a second to say the pause that I had to get married, to decide that I love writing and I love freelance writing and I love podcasting, and I'm going to tie all that together. And that is Status Life with Leta. So I am relaunching the blog. It is set to launch in a few weeks. So no matter who listens to this, I know podcasts live forever. You can go to statuslifewithleta.com and hopefully it will be up and running. Yeah, as a full working lifestyle blog.
Congratulations.
I know that's a lot, right? And then I need a jump off point.
Well, for those of you who are curious about her 3 seasons of podcasting, wherever you listen to your podcast, and I listen on iTunes, so it's super easy, just type in Status Life with Leta. And Leta is spelled Leta. And enjoy her archived episodes. And then also make sure that you tune into her new and upcoming episodes as well.
There's so much there. So, I'm an interior designer by trade. So I've been doing that 23 years. It's almost to the point where I don't want to say I can do it with my eyes closed, but because I've been doing it so long, I can visualize, I can see colors, I keep up with the trends. I mean, that's just sort of the part of my business that runs without me even having to run it, just because I've been in that business for so long. Still taking on clients, still doing work. I just wrapped up a huge country club last year. I did 2 restaurants and their golf course clubhouse. And so that was a big project amongst
Everything
closing
else
the retail stores and the fire and the wedding. I had this massive project going. So again, needed a much needed 10-month break.
Right.
So I'm looking forward to switching gears behind the blog and the podcast and the design firm. And that's still 3 huge things.
Yes. In addition to all the other balls that you juggle.
Right?
For those who'd like to learn more about Leta and her passion for interior design and all the things that she shared, do check her out online. Leta, I want to kind of rewind a little bit and kind of peel back the layers and maybe get a little personal if that's okay.
Yeah.
Let's start with where you grew up.
Absolutely. I'm actually from Michigan.
Michigan.
Yes, I'm not a Southerner, even though I've been here. We're taping in Georgia for whoever's listening. I was born in Lansing, and I grew up in northern Michigan in Traverse City. My father got a teaching job. He was a college professor until he retired, and it was down here in DeKalb County. He was an automotive mechanics instructor, again, on the college level at a tech school. So what that brought my parents and I and my younger sister south. So my entire family, grandparents, cousins, everybody's in Michigan. So that has always, I've identified with that as home. But I've been down here a long time. I did middle school, high school, college here in the South. In Georgia. I went to the University of Georgia, and that's where my degree is from. I did move away for 10 years. I got a job as a project manager for a large development firm, and that took me to Florida. And I was down there developing land, subdivisions. There was a big land boom back in the early 2000s. We all know what happened in 07, 08 with the big recession, and that really changed things, but that was also the time I was ready to start having children. So it was also a nice pause. Perfect. So at that point, I was ready to come back. On a completely separate note, and what I think is interesting, along with doing the interior design, the project management, the construction, I also owned and ran a dance academy in Florida for almost 10 years. So,
what kind of dance?
Well, I'm
Like
trained in everything, yes. I'm, believe it or not, hip-hop is my specialty.
I can believe it.
I love ballet, but it was not, I don't know if my body's not built for it. I know ballet makes you the strongest dancer that you can be, but jazz, hip-hop, contemporary, that was definitely all my forte. So I would work as an interior designer during the day, and I would run the studio, teach classes at night. So that was a lot of fun. But anyways, when the recession hit and it was time to slow things down, and I'd gotten pregnant, I sold the studio and moved back here to Georgia, but I can't sit still. When you have that entrepreneurial brain, I immediately partnered up with a dear friend who we are still partners in the interior design firm today. This is back in 2008, and that's when Status was born. Wow. So she is one of the most talented interior designers I've ever met. She was coming from a large firm in Atlanta. They had 50 interior designers, 40 or 50 interior designers, but because of the recession, they had scaled back. And she was also pregnant. So we partnered up, and I said, well, I have this skill set, and she had this skill, and they just married together really well, and the first Status business was born.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So you said you went to UGA, and you had children, so obviously where did you meet your first husband?
Oh, yes. So Brian and I, we've actually known each other since the fourth grade. Yes, which is when I moved here. No, okay. I moved here in 1985, moved to Gwinnett County in 86. So I entered the end of elementary school here, and we were in the same class.
Oh.
So we were friends. Our parents were friends. Our younger sisters played travel softball together. I've known him. We kind of ran in the same circle, went to a big high school. So to be in a clique, you kind of find your people. But we were always friends, and we're friends to this day. Our marriage didn't work out, but I feel like because we were friends, we just, I don't know. Divorce is hard. And I will point everybody back to Status Life with Leta. I was asked many, many, many times, you have to talk about this. You have the most cordial divorce. You and Brian are always together. Your kids even say, well, my parents are best friends. How does that work as a divorced couple? So without unpacking too much here, I think I did a whole series
on blended families.
Yes, on how to do it correctly, in my opinion, because I am divorced. But we remain cordial, and I even brought in an adult who her parents had been divorced as kids. So she was speaking from, I was the child of divorce, and I'm speaking from, I'm a divorced parent. So we kind of took different angles and unpacked all that. So.
And you have 2 beautiful children,
I do. And I'm remarried. Yes. And that's a whole nother part of my career too. I got married in August, and wonderful, was not looking for Derek, and he would say the same. I will. I will. It is sweet. So I was happy single. I had a cute little house and some cats, and I was raising my kids, and I had my retail store, just busy, lots of friends. I'm definitely an extrovert. I don't know if you can grasp that from my personality, just from the way I talk, but I was very, very content in my life. And sometimes I think that's when love finds you, when you're not looking for it. I was not dating. I was not online dating. Not that there's anything wrong with it. It just wasn't for me. And I just thought, when my kids are grown and gone, I'll live in my sweet little house here, and I'll just have my cats, and that's just going to be the way life is. And my girlfriend said, hey, let's play hooky on Friday, and let's go to this PGA tournament that was happening. And I thought, playing hooky for me, when you're a single mom and you're trying to make ends meet and you own your own business, you're an entrepreneur, you don't take days off. You're working. When they're in school, you're working. Maybe a Saturday when they're at home, but not a Friday. And I said, let me see how much work I get done. Well, the stars aligned. Friday was a gorgeous day here in Atlanta. It was specifically April 13th. And I texted her that morning. I said, you know what? I can do it. Nice. Gabriel has a test. As soon as it's over, I'll check him out, and let's go. Let's go to this tournament. Derek said the same thing. Derek's an attorney here in Atlanta, the law office of Derek Hays, and never takes off work, never gets home before 10 o'clock at night, just a workaholic, same entrepreneur, has his own law practice, very demanding. He also took the day off of work and was at the same tournament, and the friends that I had sort of been grouped with, the friends that my friend knew, were his friends. Wow. And so we ended up in the same place. We were introduced, and it was very casual, but we found each other the whole week. I ended up going back on Saturday because I had such a good time Friday, but we just gravitated towards each other. We would sit by each other, we would talk, and at the end of the weekend, he asked for my number, and almost 5 years later, we were married. Oh. So, yeah, it was very adult. He wasn't dating. He had been single a lot longer than I had. He's 10 years older than I am, but it was very sweet, and it was meant to be.
And what a gorgeous setting and beautiful
Lake
story.
Lanier. Yes. Yeah. Oh, at where we met. Yeah. Yes, I was going to say we got married at Lake Lanier.
Your wedding was gorgeous too. I admired your photos on Facebook.
Oh, thank you. It was wonderful.
I'd like to jump back for our listener base. Is a lot of young professionals that are starting the journey to entrepreneurship and looking to become leaders of their own. Talk a little bit about some challenges that you experienced when launching your business and kind of navigating the road to success before you were fully flying.
Absolutely. This is something, I have a degree in art and a minor in interior design, and that just happened because I entered the interior design program as a junior at the University of Georgia. It's a 4-year accredited program, so you're supposed to enter as a freshman, but that wasn't my journey. I had some other majors. What I'm saying is there's no business classes in there. So everything that I learned, here I am owning a massive business, and there's what's a P&L sheet? What's what am I supposed to file with what organization and what license am I supposed to have? I mean, this was knowledge that I absolutely had to learn as I went. And looking back, I wish I hadn't. I wish I had done some classes, and not necessarily even college classes, but maybe it's the way that I learn. I don't want to just take a webinar. And I do that for social media and the marketing trends, and this is what we're doing with our reels, and that's all well and good. But when it comes to running a business, there is so much either college education or continuing education. I wish that I had gone and even a week course teach me QuickBooks.
Yes.
Teach me the accounting. Teach me what is really, because I learned it all as I went, and it was much, much, much harder. So if I could give any advice, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, that basically means you are going to own your own business. So let's say you make jewelry. I'm just going to pick something that could start as relatively small. You may have all the talent in the world. I may be the most talented interior designer because I can visualize a room. But I've got to order your furniture. I've got to invoice you. I've got to pay the sales tax on it. I mean, there are so many business decisions that come with putting that room together. The same thing a jewelry maker. Where are you going to order it from? How do you do the wholesale? Are you tax exempt? You have to file taxes on that. You have to, I mean, there's a million little details that go into what the trade is. I mean, you can even bigger than that. Let's say you're an accounting company, or, I mean, there are so many things. You may know what your skill is, but you may not know how to run it as a business.
Right.
I can speak to Derek. He's an attorney, and he is at the top of his game as an attorney. He's probably, the top attorney in the state of Georgia, but that also makes him a business owner.
Right.
So he's doing his own books, and he has to do his own marketing, and that is not his skill set. So what do you farm out? What do you get an education on? What does he take seminars on? So for anyone listening, I would say education, education, education. No matter where you get it, I'll figure it out as I go. That's a great mentality. And sometimes for us entrepreneurs, we want that immediate gratification. We want to just get up and running, but that can hurt you later in a big, big way.
I too have experienced that challenge, just mentioning QuickBooks. It's all well and good in your mind, but then when you talk about, okay, now I have to account for all of these dollars. I have to ensure that I put X amount aside for taxes, invoicing, all those things. It was a challenge that also was new to me, and I also had to seek some online assistance. So I agree with you in that regard. You built a team at Status,
yes,
and you managed them well, but they were all kind of their own entities under one roof. Like everybody had a booth, right?
Right. Yep. That was one of the LLCs, was a vendor mall. That was under that big umbrella. Yes.
So talk a little bit about what qualities make a good leader and how you successfully led your team.
Okay. This part I love. So there are two different parts to being a leader that were under my LLC. So when Status, it was originally called Status Home Design. That was the name of the big store. And I had 70 merchants or vendors that rented space. We call it like an antique mall, but antiques weren't selling at the time. This was very upscale. This was very beautiful home decor that, we really tried, wasn't a flea market. I mean, I'm an interior designer, so this was a very upscale store.
Classy.
Very classy store. But then I also built my team of employees because the size of that store warranted a big team. So I had the employee team and I had all the vendors as a team. And those teams had to work together very, very simultaneously. The vendors could be very challenging. So, you have 70 individual personalities, and some of that 70 was times 2 because a lot of this would be a mother-daughter pairing as a booth, husband and wife. It's not always one person, right? If it's a wife, her husband's going to come in and help her unload the furniture, or her son, or, so basically it was 140, yes, instead of 70. And what I found, and it does come somewhat natural for me, and I do feel like that is a God-given gift. I can lead it maybe as a personality trait, and then you find the skill set to back that up, right? We talked about the continuing education. I would read books, how to be a good leader, listen to a podcast. There are real tangible things out there that make a good leader. What I found is, let's just talk about the side of the vendors, because I've got 140 people all looking at me to make sure things are running smoothly, to make sure I'm doing enough marketing, to make sure the accounting is right, to put out fires, so to speak. And what I found more than anything is they want you to be accountable. They want answers. If they send you an email, if they send a text, if they're at the front counter and they have a problem, They just want you to know that they have been heard. They don't want to, I'll get back to you, and you never circle back. These are people that are they are paying to be in my store. They want to be there. They are giving me their hard-earned money. I have to lead them. I have to answer their questions. I have to put on the events to bring extra customers in the store. With that comes a tremendous amount of stress. Tremendous, because their sales are based on my performance, and that's how it feels. Now, their sales are ultimately based on their merchandise. I can't control. I mean, I have guidelines of what you can bring in,
right,
and that is the quality control that the store has, which is also on me ultimately.
Right. And like
ultimately, it all falls on me. If an employee makes a mistake, ultimately it falls on me. And so that's a different way of leading when you're leading your team, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But leading the vendors, they want emails. They want correspondence. They want to know that you are in charge. They want to know that they want to see your face. I would get, I haven't seen you that much. Like, well, you come in the afternoon and I'm here in the morning. You know, there are things like but they want you as the leader to be present in the store. That way they know that you are in control. And ultimately, when they've made a decision, because there's a lot of other stores out there that they could be giving their hard-earned money, but they chose mine. And I think that's the biggest trait. I see a lot right now, friends and some charities and some businesses, and I'm doing a lot of business consulting right now. Since I had that 10-month pause, I've had some retail stores come in and say, yours was so successful. Can you work with me? But the biggest thing is they'll say, well, this is my boutique and this is my manager. I'm going to work on this venture over here. I get that because I did it too. I opened another store. That's not it. Ultimately, it is going to suffer. And that manager is not you. When you build a business, you are the face of that business. Yes. You may see entrepreneurs on their yachts and doing this and, I only work this amount of. Okay, that may be a big established business or some big established company. Like, I'm not Google, okay? I'm Status Home Design, right? And but he's still the face. Right. He is still the face. No matter where he is, he stays present. And that is more than anything what you have to do. You cannot think, I'm going to build this, then it's going to run, and I'm going to walk away and go do this other venture. I just don't think it's going to be as successful.
I would agree with you 100%. For those of you just joining us on Celebrating Powerhouse Women today, my guest is Leta Brooks Hays, and we are going to have a word from our sponsors, and when we come back, we're going to talk about managing stress.
Awesome.
NEMA is a full-service logistics company that provides trucking, warehousing, and expedited deliveries for the paper machine clothing industry. They offer a full line of services, including delivery within the 48 contiguous states, Canada, and Mexico, plus importing and exporting, air freight forwarding services, foreign trade zone warehousing, and many more services to handle your global logistics needs. NEMA is a proud sponsor of the Celebrating Powerhouse Women podcast series.
We know running a business is hard. There are so many things that need to get done, and you don't have the time, the resources, the experience, or you just don't want to do it yourself. At Sourced, we have your back. Office. We support leaders of companies with all their back office challenges that weigh them down. Whether it's accounting, talent acquisition, administrative support, marketing, or human resources, our team of experts at Sourced will make your life easy and your back office effortless. To see how we can help you, check us out at getsourced.com.
All right, and welcome back, folks. For those of you joining us, again, my guest is Leta Brooks Hays, and we are in studio here on Celebrating Powerhouse Women. And before the break, we were talking about leadership and managing business, and now I'd like to dive into managing stress. Leta, you always present yourself in such a polished manner, and you're always so perky, and I know how much you do. So my question is, how do you juggle all the balls that you have to in life, business, and then also personally, and how do you maintain the balance?
Well, the balance, the big ultimate question, right, that we all want to know. And I say women because this is a women's show, and I'm a female business owner. So this really came full circle for me. And 10 months ago, if you had asked me this, I would say, I handle stress so well. And I really, truly thought I did. I thought that I worked better under pressure. And there is an element of that. I still really feel like when I have a deadline, it tends to make any of us hustle. There is a good amount of healthy stress. But what healthy stress had turned into me was I was building this huge platform and this huge status brand. So Status Life with Leta was a blog I wasn't doing anything with. Status Life with Leta was also a podcast that I was doing a lot with. Status Design Studio, my interior design firm. Shops at Status was what I rebranded. We talked about Status Home Design, and Status Home Design lived. And then I opened the Status Market. Was a whole, look how many, I mean, that's a whole lot of status that just came out of my mouth. How does one person who was also a single mom going through this, yes, I was engaged in a relationship, but I was a single mom. We didn't live together. And then he proposed. So now I'm planning a wedding. So add all these entities, right? My hands are up in the air and I'm going, these are all these little balls in the air. And what I ended up realizing was there was no balance. And so that's probably not, you want to go, how did you find it? You know what? I have a lot of entrepreneurial friends, and the balance is the absolute positive hardest part. Because if you're giving a lot to your career, chances are you're feeling that mommy guilt. And I've got a lot of mommy friends that would say, I just wish I could work, or I wish I could have something for me, but it's all about my kids right now. So I will say the guilt for us women does play in a ton to where we're going to spend our time. And we always think we're going to have that balance. We're going to find it. I'm going to get this project done, and then I'll find balance. And it truly, it doesn't work. But when you're in it, you cannot understand that. It truly took for me to close the big store. And I did not want to do that. Let me just put a little caveat, because we've been talking a lot about how I manage those vendors and the big platform that was 10 months ago. I was in a retail shopping center, and it was time to re-sign the lease. The lease had expired. I had been a year expired and just going month to month, but I wasn't protected that way. The landlord wasn't protected. So I started negotiating, and they more than doubled my rent. And that's I say me, that's a status. I know what the numbers are, and the business couldn't afford it. We would have started every month in the red, and then you're just chasing customers. And I didn't want that. I knew where we were, and I knew, you expect in retail, you expect 4% growth each year. You've had a good year if you've got 4% growth in retail, and we had hit that mark every year. The year after COVID, we actually had a 25%.
Wow.
Because everybody had been cooped up. You would think it would be a loss, but they flooded Status. As soon as the doors opened, it flooded. And that was amazing. But I would say to my team, as a leader, we would have, meetings. These are ebbs and flows. This is not going to remain. We are at the top right now. Sales are killing it. Everybody's bored, and they've been staring at their walls. And we are open. All they want is florals or a new mirror, or, we can't even keep merchandise in. Again, ebbs and flows. But you have to realize that if you're at the top of your game with your company, chances are you're not going to stay there. It's a really, really hard thing. It's not attainable to think there is growth, but then there's 4% to 25% is what I'm saying, right? You want to always continue to grow. You're not in business. But you want to go 4% to 8%, to 12%. 4 to 25 was huge. Okay, so backing up just a hair back to balance. I just knew. I knew that the doubling, even if I was 100% full of vendors, I knew the numbers. And I knew that chasing customers, having a slow day, having a rainy day, having the second quarter, which is not your best quarter in retail, I would just be not able to sleep at night if the numbers were and where they were. And that was extremely painful I personally called everybody on my staff, and then I sent, an email to all the vendors. And it was grueling to have to close this. I had put 7 years of blood, sweat, and tears, and it came down to a financial decision. But ultimately, I knew on the other side of it that taking this big monstrosity of a business off of my plate would give me more balance. It's naive to think it wouldn't, right? I had a 45-minute commute and a business that was open 7 days a week, and I had 12 people on my staff and 70 vendors and big rent, big power bills, all of that gone. What would my life look like? And I had a smaller store. And I thought, well, I'll look for another big store and I'll just focus on my small boutique store. And that's the one. We had no idea. I mean, no one has the crystal ball that 2 months after I closed the big store, the small store got hit by lightning, which caused a fire. Freak accident. Yes. But the smoke damage, it took it all. So now balance. I talked a lot in the beginning about business burnout. I have done a whole series about business pivoting, business burnout. I've brought in experts. That's all on Status Life with Leta. It was the end of season 2 when all this was changing. And it was a nice pause for me to take the summer, focus on my kids. We did the Summer of Yes, where I said yes to anything that they wanted.
No way.
Because I had been so engrossed in my business. And it's not that they were ever neglected. I mean, I did everything in my power to make a good schedule, to always have a nanny. You know, I didn't want to do the daycare route. That just wasn't for me. But I wasn't very present with them, right? I was on my phone a lot, or I was up late at night checking emails, which made them late for school. I mean, you have to, you know, when you're an entrepreneur, these things have to get done.
When do you have time to blog?
That's why I didn't.
Yeah.
That's why it existed, but I didn't have time. Writing takes a tremendous amount of time. It can take an entire day just to get one blog post done. And I didn't have those days. You know, my plate was so full that there was no balance. And so stripping it all away between the fire and then closing the other status and taking the Summer of Yes. And they didn't ask for anything that wasn't within reason.
I mean,
no, they would say
Disney?
We did Universal.
Okay.
And we did Universal last February. So I closed the store. Valentine's Day was the last day that Status was open to customers. And their winter break was that following weekend. And I was a ball of emotion. I was crying like crazy. I mean, I was in depression. I mean, this was not an easy process. And I can be very real about that. I had a friend mentoring me. She had closed a retail store years ago. She was on the horn whenever I needed her to be on the phone. And she said, if you don't cry 50 more times throughout this process, it didn't mean anything to you. And so when the emotions would rise, and do you know, to this day, all the people in the community, when I finally made the public announcement, I've never been able to read those messages because they were so heartfelt. And it hurt. And I was too depressed about what I was losing. Even though I knew there was a silver lining, it still was really, really hard. And I've never gone to the Facebook page and read. And just because I loved it, because I was disappointing the vendors and the staff and the community as a whole. So I think that's very real to talk about when you build something and you put everything you have into it. Let's go back to the balance. The Summer of Yes, we ended up, so I closed it on February 14th. On a whim, it was midnight on a Thursday night. Their fall break or their winter break started on Friday morning. I packed their suitcases. They had no idea. Booked a hotel at midnight, and we left at 9 a.m. And I just took them to Universal. Just the kids, just us. Yeah. Derek didn't even go. I needed to get out of town. I needed to be with them. I needed to love on them. We needed to laugh. And I just stayed off social media, let the messages roll in, and I just went and rode roller coasters. For 3 days. Literally. And it was wonderful. And that just translated to me just giving them the whole summer and focusing on the wedding. I mean, don't get me wrong. That was all happening at the same time. So
I love the Summer of Yes.
It was the we've podcasted about that too. So these things I'm touching on lightly. I mean, you can unpack, what all this really meant and a lot more of the stories. And for anyone listening who's an entrepreneur that's toying, maybe your business isn't working. Maybe the numbers aren't there. Maybe you need the balance that I have found now. And I definitely want to make sure we touch on that because I'm telling you, I didn't have it. My resume was too big. I had too many things, all those status businesses. I was in charge of all of them. And some of them had managers, but they're still not the owner.
Right.
It was just and I thought, I'm building a brand. I'm building this. I'm going to be an influencer.
All the time I've known you, I don't think I've ever caught the story of how you came up with the name or the brand status. What is that?
So that was, I call them these think tank meetings, right? Those brainstorming meetings. And my friend Nicole that I told you back in 2008, she had come from this large firm And we would meet, she lives in Smyrna, so we would meet at Premier Mall, and we were both pregnant, so we would have our big bellies, and we would go and meet for lunch once a week. And each of us were coming up with words, right? We have all these buzzwords and logos and colors, and really that's the way, branding can really come about.
Right.
And we played with it, design studio and status and luxe and elite. And we had all these great words that we felt like were very interior design adjectives, and we just started narrowing and looking and what's available with the Secretary of State and what really sits with us, and we felt like it was status. The status. I have status. I want to hire an interior designer. Coincidentally, that word has taken a whole new meaning, because now that I have rebranded many times, many more logos. I mean, everything, every 4 or 5 years, every business goes through a rebranding. Status now is very interesting, because my platform as Status Life with Leta, the first question is, what's the status of your life? Okay. What's the status of your home? What's the status of your marriage? What's the status of your career? Start with asking yourself that question, and then unpack, how can I help you? Do you want design advice? Do you want some of this business advice? Do you want me to tell you how I didn't have balance and now I do? It doesn't matter what you're looking for. That's the platform that I have built on a word that had a whole different meaning back in 2008.
It's transformative.
It absolutely is. Yes.
So I'm going to ask you, Leta, what is the status of your life right now?
Right now is more balanced than it has ever been. And we don't have enough time to talk about what I went through. I talked about touching on the depression in closing a store that I had built. And that was a situational. I don't suffer from depression, but you can absolutely have grief and a situational depression from losing something you love. Absolutely. And I went through that. And again, I was very open about it on the end of season 2. So to dig in more, but moving on now, it's been 10 months. Burnout and healing from that, it is not overnight. And I thought, okay, well, I'm going to do this. I'm going to, I'm such an entrepreneur. When you close one thing, you've got to jump into the next. No, I couldn't even make myself start blogging. I just couldn't. I had to take a break from the podcast. Like, I just couldn't get back into it. And that's what the burnout meant. And that's where I was. So jump all the way forward. The blog is almost done. I've had so much fun with it. I'm loving season 3 of the podcast. I think I've got more energy. I'm more focused. I'm in it. I'm loving this.
Refreshed.
Very refreshed. Had the wedding. Kids are doing better. We're getting ready to renovate our home. It's like everything is finally balanced. And because I was able to strip everything away and only add the pieces that had meaning, and I said the word value earlier. So I have taken a position with Derek's law firm. I am now his director of marketing, which I absolutely love. I'm good at social media, and he had that position in his firm that was lacking. And what I have found is I love going to his office. I don't go every day.
Yeah.
I can do social media every day, but I love putting on the blazer, and I love being in an office setting, and I love being around his paralegals, and I love being near him in a work capacity, and that feels very balanced because he works a lot. So for me to see him, I need to go to him. We went to a networking party last night, and I'm handing out cards as of my blog and for the law office of Derek Hays. So that feels balanced, right? It's just enough to help him and be close to him and yet still have my platform. Still home every day when the kids get off the bus. I joined a gym. I've added that back in. It's like
Orange City Fitness?
No. I go to a place near Athens, which is closer to where we live.
I forgot you live all the way up there.
We do. We live, we live in the country, close to Athens, which we love.
Beautiful.
But all these little things that I'm telling you, I had given up running and exercise because there was no time. I had given up friends and friendships. There was no time to sit and have lunch with people. I probably would have said no to being invited on this podcast because there was no time. And time, it ultimately really is what balance is all about. Is there enough time? I had quit cooking. I forgot how to cook. It took a minute. It took months. But where my kids were like, okay, Mom, thank you. This is, thank you. When you're heating up stuff, that's not going and paying attention to what they're eating. And I've been getting up and cooking eggs and bacon every morning. And I hadn't done that in years. Yeah. It's time when you're trying to get ready for work. And it's just, and I'm not taking away from the working mom. I'm still working. I did open up a retail. I am now a vendor in a store like mine. Cool. So it's in Monroe. Yeah. It's the Status Market. So I took my big store and just scaled it back. So I get to play with the retail. I still get to shop. I still get to pick and travel and do all the antiquing that I love. And I have an outlet to sell it. But I don't have a big staff. I don't have these big
overhead.
Bills. I don't have the $10,000 a plus month rent. Like all this massive stuff that was all stress. Yeah. I scaled all of it back. And some of it came to me in the way of a fire. And some of it came in the way of a landlord raising a rent. And all these decisions, you know,
I know that you're a faithful person.
Very faithful. And that's kind of where I want to go with this. Can I tell you how all this came about? So in 7 years, I never prayed for finances. I never prayed for customers. It's not where my prayer came from. My prayer was open the doors that need to be opened and close the doors that need to be closed. That was it. Very simple. If this is the route I'm supposed to take, keep it going. And for 7 years, that was the path. And my podcast came about. So that door was opened. And ultimately, when we got that lease in the mail and it was, way too expensive that the business could afford, that door was closed. And even though it was hard, I knew it was necessary. And the fire, that was closed. Act of God, just by a lightning strike, caught the gas line and caught up under the crawl space. And as much as I grieved and was very devastated when I lost the big store, I never once cried when we lost the small store because I felt like it was God. Yeah. It was, you open these doors. And because I kept saying, if I'm supposed to open another big store, show me where I'm supposed to go. Yeah. Open that door. And it never opened. And right now it's not opened. But this place in Monroe opened and I'm having more fun. Yeah. I get to play with it. I get to see what my sales are every night. I get to take more furniture. Derek gets to go with me on the weekends. It's more fun, but for me, it's more balance. And I did pray for balance. Lord, help me find the time, help me stretch time. Who needs to stretch time?
There's
like
never
you shouldn't,
enough time.
Right. But that's where it all came from. And so that really goes full circle to, I didn't have any balance and prayed those prayers and made the decisions that I made. And it took me 10 months to do a lot of healing and a lot of soul searching. And I've added the things in my life to give me more time with my family, to be in the kitchen more, to be at Derek's office more, to still play with retail, and to blog. Yeah. But I have to tell you one more thing. So opening doors and closing doors. I was asked to speak at a women's conference. So my first speaking gig was Friday night, and there was 400 women in the room.
Where was it at?
It was at Greystone Church. It was a women's conference at Greystone Church. But I didn't speak to religion. I was asked to speak and teach the 2023, which is what year we're in. I don't, I hate to put those numbers on a podcast because I know this will live forever. But 2023 design trends. So I was in my lane, right? And I worked incredibly hard, and I put a presentation and had all these slides, and it went great, wonderful. But at the end of it, it was specifically 360 women. I told all 360 women if they had a problem spot in their house, they could take a picture of it and they could email me and I would give them my best design advice. Wow. And do you know, I woke up the next morning.
360 emails.
A lot. My email box was full. And I'm working them every day. I try to answer a few. But that's the status.
Wow.
That's what I want to do. It's my God-given gift of the vision and to have this voice and to have this platform. And if they have a trouble spot in their home, I want to give back. Right?
That's so sweet.
That's the fun part.
You are definitely being generous with your time, treasures, and talents, as my friend Randy Brunson would say. Leta, as we come to a close here, I do just want to give you a moment to give our listeners a final thought or some words of wisdom before we say bye-bye.
Okay, absolutely. The final thought, I love the word edit, and I use the word edit a lot when I'm talking design trends. It was a big part of my speech the other night, edit. And you have to have that edit when you're looking at your house. If you want to see the speech and the 2023 design trends, it's up at greystonechurch.org under Status Life with Leta. That is not what I want to leave everyone with. My final thought. When I'm saying edit, because we talked a lot about balance, and I touched on business burnout, and I touched on all the entrepreneurial things that I have and have had, edit means you really have to look at your life, and you have to say, what is this bringing me? Is this bringing me financial goals? Is this getting me further to the big goal? And what happened to me was I got so caught up in all of it, and I thought it was all going to this big status platform, that I had too many irons in the fire, and I couldn't focus on just one thing. I couldn't be the mom I wanted to be, and I couldn't be the business owner that I wanted to be, and I couldn't be the podcaster that I wanted to be. I was giving everything my time, but none of it my focus. Had I had a stronger edit of my life, had I asked myself, and I could say, what's the status of my life? Chaos, which is where I don't want it to be.
Right.
And I had to get silent, and I had to make some really, really hard decisions that were gut-wrenching. And people don't always want to do hard things. You know, they don't want to tell their boss they want a raise, or they don't want to tell them they want less hours. Like, people are afraid to do these things. But that's the edit. You have to look at what's not serving you. Where are you spending too much time that's not adding value? And that's my best advice. However you can do that, even if it's hard, you know, use me as an example in my story. I will put it all out there. I walked through these hard things, and I'm happier, and I'm more balanced, and I'm a better mom, and a better wife, and a better entrepreneur than I've ever been.
Well, congratulations,
Thank
Leta.
you.
I'm so excited that our listeners got to hear your story. And Leta has actually a more extensive journey we didn't even get into about your service and your personal, what would we call it, sacrifice for others. And again,
There's a lot.
Wherever
The
you guys,
kidney?
yes, that's what I was talking
I mean,
about.
they're yes. Yes.
Wherever you guys find your podcast, do be sure to check out Status Life with Leta. And again, that's Leta. And while you're there subscribing, please subscribe to Celebrating Powerhouse Women. If you enjoy these stories of influential women in our community, please hit that 5-star. We always love hearing back from you. These shows are available 24/7 online at businessradiox.com. And we are live every Friday at 11:30 a.m. I want to thank our guest, Ms. Leta Brooks Hays, and our producer, Mike, today. We will be back next Friday. I'm your host, Amanda Pierce Marmolejo, and this is Celebrating Powerhouse Women on Business Radio X.